Cool.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, and then I guess just for those who weren't at the last meeting, our goal is to have the draft completely done by the end of this calendar year and out for review for 2023. Okay, and then I guess the in other news, this grant report section, we've talked about the Prescribed Burn Association grant from CAL FIRE, getting that started, and we're very close to being able to start work on that. I'm actually wanting to ask a question here in terms of our grant reporting, and this is a question to the Fire Safe Council. What do you want to see on here, up and coming, and also things that are in place? Because as things are starting to fall in place and programming is starting to fall in place, it makes me wonder where you want to see that, because it'll be kind of ongoing progress reports or yeah, this has been up until now, it's been a section of the coordinator report where we talk about money that we're waiting for and grants that we're waiting for, and it's about to be, we actually dropped one off this month that's already in play, and that's the Regional Forest and Fire Capacity Building Program that is going to help cover our new outreach coordinator that's coming on. It's going to cover time for helping to manage like the chipping program, for example, and it's going to help build some more wildfire program assistance, technical assistance in the county. So the rest of these on here, we are still in that almost here, money's almost here, we're almost going to get started mode. And the Prescribed Burn Association having almost been started. So I kind of would like to know like how much information you want to see on the coordinating reports, because I'll so the rest of these you've seen before and we're waiting, like I said. Yeah, does anybody have any feelings on that? Do you want to see it all? Do you want to see just up and coming stuff?
Heather, comment. This is Bill Weisgerber from East Davis County. Could we break them up to like, in categories like funded, in application process, or, like that. And then ones that are funded, like, so what's happening with those, started, finished, well, I don't know what, some breakdown so that we can kind of tell what their progress is. Is that a doable thing?
Sounds pretty reasonable to me.
Hey,
The report will start to get long.
Heather, I'll work with you. I've got a couple ideas about that from a sheet that we had that very same issue. I'm sure some of you have had issues when you're trying to track so many different grants or funding opportunities at the same time in a way that's kind of easily digestible. So no need to reinvent the wheel. I'll send you some stuff after the meeting. Thanks, Bill, for that comment.
This is Kate Laddish from Yolo IHSS. I really agree with Bill. I think that'd be a great way to keep track of what's going on in terms of application process, as well as with the projects that have already been funded.
Thanks for the input. I guess, like I said, most of the other things on here, there's the early action funding that we'll go into detail a little bit more about today. The second one down, that Yolo and Solano's RCD, the USDA Natural Resource Service one, that's also like still in process, and that is to help support cost share programming for pre and post fire practices. And also a little bit of technical assistance funding to support RCD technical staff. So that's, hopefully starting in the next few months. And then, yeah, the Prescribed Burn Association grant will be a whole other project, will be a whole other group. We're going to form an association mostly with the ranchers who own property in the hills, for example, and coordinating with the fire chiefs. We'll give you a whole presentation on that program as it becomes, as it becomes active. That way you know what's happening. and kind of key into that. So there may be a few folks who are going to be also attending, those meetings or getting involved in demonstration, burn planning, and demonstration burns. And then at the bottom, we'll dig into that a little bit more with OES's report in terms of the notice of intents and the status with those. And there is a lot of fire funding, we all know. Kate is still tracking all of those things. We didn't bring her to this meeting because there's a lot more to talk about on the projects that do have funding now and the status of where those are going currently. So I think that's all I really need to say for now, Tanya. I don't know, Chris, Rose, did you want to add anything here? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think just a little bit. I mean, it's relatively redundant, and then Karen might fill in the gaps real quick, but honestly, it's very similar. Like I said, on a bunch of these things we're doing in conjunction, and a few of them we're doing like a year later. We are signing 2 of the contracts, the CAL FIRE contract that we have with CAL FIRE, but it's actually Solano County is taking the lead, and we're a subcontractor to the county on that grant. And it's to do similar things that we're talking about now, the CWPP, as well as working with fire safe councils, evacuation plans, alert systems. We're still haven't gotten a full signed MOU, but we've already started work. And Karen is here because of that, because of this grant. As well as the grant that we're also working with USDA, Natural Resources Conservation Service, and also the Department of Conservation grant that we're also doing. So we have a bunch of things that are starting up, which is exciting. It's interesting to see how Yolo, RCD, and the county and OES are working, and how we're working in Solano and how it's developing. And it may not all be developing in the same way, which is neither good or bad. It's just different. They are hiring a county coordinator position with the California Fire Safe Council funds, and they've sent out, or will send out a job description for that, a job announcement very soon. So the idea is that the county will have a lead person at OES, and then Karen at our office will be our fire lead, and then we'll be working together in that way to tackle all these different projects and programs. So yeah, that's pretty much my update. The plant sale this Saturday is a great joint effort, Yolo and Solano RCDs. I think the start of a lot of our collaboration on a lot of different things, so it makes sense to do joint workshops. So we're looking forward to it. I think that's about all I have.
Ready.
I think it's time for our OES update, the most exciting one.
All right, Kurt, you're on, or Dana, whoever wants to take the ball.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Basically, as you saw on the chart or on the spreadsheet that Heather and Tanya went through, we have a lot of stuff going on with regards to grant management. Specifically, we're between now and the second week of April. A lot of the projects that were submitted for NOIs, notice of interest with the state, that got rolled into the federal level, so up to the FEMA level for hazard mitigation grant program. We have to do a sub application, and so I've been talking to a couple different groups, including Severa, and we've been talking. OES has also been talking with the West Winters folks. Neil in particular has been very helpful in gathering some information for us. We've been populating different tools, i.e. GIS documents, so that we can share that information, excuse me, with our applicant partners, such as Cal OES and FEMA. So we're just moving through. We've got a couple that came back as declined because that wasn't within their scope of their grant this year, and just so that take it off into far left field, but the grants usually come about from incidents that occur. And because of that, they have some scope of work that they want to see. And we submitted, I think, a total of like 17 or 18 of them, and we got kickbacks denied, or a request for taking it out of play on about 8 or 9 of them. And one that we just got a notice on just as of last week was a pub ed one that they thought wasn't within the scope of the project that they were working through. So unfortunately, that one went out. But the good thing is there's other funding sources that are out there for most of these. And that's about it. I think with regards to this, I know Heather already talked about the CAL FIRE, the one that we just got, the PVA. So that to RCD for all their hard work in putting that application together. And other than that, unless there's any questions or anything specific, Tanya or Heather, that'd be the end of our report.
Heather, do you want to give this update, the early action funding section? Just explain what's going on with the chipper program, and
Sure.
I can talk a little bit about signage as well.
Okay, so we had kind of put our, the RCD had recognized, and the chipper program is something that, you know, we could manage, and I think everyone's recognized it as a priority. When the Board of Supervisors approved sort of that year one kind of pilot amount for 120,000, we talked with the Office of Emergency Services, and, you know, we were discussing how the RCD could help manage that project, and how we could get it done and get going now. After discussion, we, you know, one of the first things that's hard to do is get a contractor in place, but the Yolo County Flood Control District is actually needing some work this year, and they already have a contract with the county, and we actually have an interagency agreement with them as well, if we had to do it that way. But they have crews that do vegetation work. They're totally qualified to do the chipping program. And so, you know, we're going to work with, actually the OES is going to work directly with Yolo County Flood Control. And they're going to buy a piece of equipment, and the RCD with our Department of Conservation grant that we, Chris and I talked about a minute ago, is already active. And we can use that existing grant funding to cover our time in outreaching for the program and working with the Graders Winter Fire Safe Council and all the community groups who have chipping needs, figure out what your needs are, figure out how much needs to be done, see what we can do this fall after equipment purchase happens, and provide that outreach and community coordination to schedule those days. So Joaquin Pastrano, our Grizzly Corps fellow, has been researching chipper programs for as part of his service to the RCD and to the Fire Safe Council. And so there are existing, very established chipping programs throughout the state. He's going to go over that. He has a great presentation he gave to our RCD board last week. He's going to give to us so you can kind of get a sense of what that can look like. And what might be involved. That's pretty straightforward service that can be provided to the community. So we're excited about how that's coming together. It seems like it's something we can actually get going on this year, which is exciting. So that's the main update I have there. You already heard about the siren system from Dana Carey, and I know Kurt and Dana are working on, as Kurt said, with the project proponents on the early action funding projects, the permitting that might be needed, getting to a point of actually being able to get those projects done. There is some background work that needs to happen, and they're working on that right now.
And then a little bit on the address sign. So we wanted to make sure that our signs are compliant. So there's a CAL FIRE code, and Damon Snow is checking with the local fire chiefs to see if there's any higher standards or different standards than the CAL FIRE standards. But then, of course, everything is always more complicated than you think. So now we need to get a list of addresses to make signs for, to put up. But we do have standards, so that is good. So I think we'll probably be working with, the on the ground fire safety councils to see who, get that list of addressees. So yeah, that's happening too. And that's, we've been talking about that being low hanging fruit, but again, it's always more complicated than you think.
Can I,
So
can I have a question there?
Mhm.
Is it time for us to actually round up those addresses, or are we jumping the gun?
You are not jumping the gun.
And the outreach would be voluntary, right? So this is not, there's no teeth in this, right? It's purely landowner agreement. So we have to make it sound as good as possible to them.
As far as I know, that actually might be better answered by one of our fire chiefs. I don't think.
So repeat your question as far as teeth in it. Do you mean, is it mandatory? Of course not. I would say that it would, if somebody would like a sign like this for their property, this is a free place to get it done.
That's what I was assuming. So yes, great. Thanks for the confirmation.
And just so you know, the sign has to be seen from both directions. So it can be two-sided. And if it can't be seen from both directions, you can get two signs so that it can be seen from both directions, if that makes sense. Either two-sided or two sides. We can talk later, but
We can go offline for that. That's great.
yeah,
Thank you.
that's great. Yeah, that's a big job. So does anyone have any other questions about our project list? Okay.
All right, on to the next, our website development committee report.
Since I'm off mute, I can tell you we hired an outreach coordinator who will be starting the first Monday of April and is going to get going on website design. And I mean, there's so much outreach that needs to happen and we're super excited. So we will be calling our website development committee back together again after we onboard her and, show her what we've got so far. She'll make it pretty.
Heather and Tanya, on that, is that a position that might be able to do what our previous question was about establishing who wants things like signs and address signs and things like that? Is that somebody that could figure out how to reach out to the communities that might be interested in that and the homeowners and so forth?
We'll certainly be doing press releases and I guess social media too as well. That's something I always forget about, but it's important. So yes.
Great, thank you. All right, so the next thing we have is a special presentation about the chipper program, wild fuel reduction. Joaquin.
Joaquin,
Yes.
you are co-host.
Awesome, thank you.
Take it away.
So yeah, like Heather said earlier, I've had the opportunity to talk to a lot of RCDs and fire safe councils along California and talk to them about their chipper program and what they do for it and how they go about operating it. And I'm going to give you all a brief rundown of what I've learned from them. So can you all see my screen? Cool. So this is wildfire fuel reduction in the wildland urban interface. So what a chipper program is a low to no cost program offered to residents through partnerships with RCDs, fire safe councils, and local fire protection districts, as well as fire departments. And those are usually the face-to-face, daily, working together collaborations. And then there's also larger collaborations that happen with PG&E and CAL FIRE, but those, they don't usually work face-to-face and daily operations is usually just funding coming from those larger organizations. And the goal of the chipper program is to offer residents a low to no cost program that will incentivize them to create the 100-foot defensible space perimeter around their homes and reduce vegetation along access routes. And that 100-foot defensible space is the legally required 100 feet around your home. That's now a requirement in SRAs. So just to reiterate, a chipper program is meant for residents and it's meant for wildfire fuel reduction. It's not meant for commercial businesses. It's not meant for timber forest reduction. It's not meant for tree farms. It's not meant for new construction sites. It's meant to be offered to residents for wildfire related reduction reasons. And so what a chipper program consists of, there's two main pieces of a chipper program, and that's the actual wood and brush chipper, and then the large truck that's around to tow it. And that truck is typically, from what I've learned from other RCDs and fire safe councils, is normally a 1-ton truck, and it's normally a diesel, just because its entire job is usually hauling things and towing. So diesels are usually what works best for that. There's other parts of a chipper program. There's also the storage trailer that is typically around to store a chipper to keep it out of the elements and keep it protected while it's not in use, as well as general PPE for the people that are operating the chipper. And that is usually things like long sleeve shirts, long sleeve pants, closed-toed boots, ear protection, eye protection, and a helmet, as well as gloves. There's also the staff is usually consists of a program coordinator who's actually in charge of the entire program and manages it, as well as an on-site supervisor who's there every day at the actual project site watching to make sure that the laborers are working correctly, as well as a hand crew, which is usually 2 or more people working on actually lifting the piles of wood and putting them into the chipper. And there's several ways to go about getting all of this equipment. As you can see in the top photo, Napa County Fire Department usually works with their the Fire Safe Council usually works with their fire department to get their fire trucks to tow the chipper for them. So that way they don't have to actually buy the tow truck, because the trucks nowadays are pretty expensive. So they work with them. Placer RCD also works with their local CAL FIRE program to store their chipper on site at the CAL FIRE station so that they don't have to find a space for it themselves. So there's multiple ways to go about working within your community to get these pieces. You can also rent them out from local businesses. We've contacted several businesses in Woodland to figure out what they quote for doing all this work, including the labor. So there's several ways. You can also even just rent out the laborers. Placer RCD works with the probation department in their county and they rent out laborers from them. So there's several ways to go about getting all of this equipment. And the way it operates also completely is dependent on the county. There's several ways to go about running a chipper program. They prefer to offer it year round. However, with funding, that can oftentimes be not possible. So what most chipper programs do is usually offer it around 8 months of the year, usually in the drier months, because the chipper is pretty heavy and there's several times where the chipper has gotten stuck in several counties in the wet and loose gravel and ground during the wetter months. So they try to keep it during the drier months, and there's several ways that they do it. They either go through a neighborhood-wise chippering day or chipper event where they say, hey, we're going to be in this neighborhood on this day, make sure your piles are out in front of your yard and we'll come through on this day and chip them for you. There's also a single request way where you actually go into their website and put in a request for your address and put in all your information, and then they just come out as the requests come in. There's also the times when people put in requests, but they don't come out with every request. They wait until a certain amount in a certain neighborhood or area builds up enough demand. And then once the demand is high enough, then they come out to that certain area and do all the requests they've received so far. And then there's also just a drop-off site where the chipper stays in one certain location and people are able to come with their trucks full of their woody debris and biomass and drop it off there. And the way a chipper program determines who it serves, ideally every county wants to serve their entire county. However, like earlier, funding doesn't always make that possible. So what they usually do is they do some kind of QWRA or look for a wildfire risk assessment and try to determine where the high fire severity zones in their county are. And they'll usually try to serve priority or give priority to those high fire severity zones. There's also counties that simply don't need to serve their entire county. For example, Placer County has a lot of woody environment, a lot of woody areas, but it also has suburbs. And those suburbs don't need the chipper program because there's no 100-foot defensible space to be going on there. So it's really dependent on the county, how they choose to determine who they serve, but most of the time it's based off some kind of quantitative wildfire risk assessment. And then the benefits of the chipper program, there are several. However, one of the main ones is that it provides a much safer way to get rid of that woody debris from your 100-foot defensible space instead of burn piles. Burn piles can often burn really hot and really large, and that can be intimidating to a lot of residents. So coming in with a chipper program would be a way to get them to still get rid of that 100-foot defensible space without having to worry about setting burn piles and such. There's also, they don't have to deal with getting permits from the air quality board or anything like that. It's a lot simpler of a process to go through than burn piles usually. There's also mulch that it provides using the chipper program, and that often has several benefits such as a weed suppressant for yards. CAL FIRE actually, if you go to their website, CAL FIRE actually recommends using mulch as a ground cover for bare spaces and as an effective fire break. So mulch has several benefits from a chipper program. And along with that, it's also just beneficial to incentivize people to get their 100-foot defensible space in as much as possible, no matter how you do it. So as you can see in the lower right photo, that's actually from Sonoma County. And that's a house that had their 100-foot defensible space in place, and a fire was able to just go right around it and never actually touch the house. So any way we can incentivize people to get this done so that their house doesn't burn down is always a benefit. And yeah, that's the chipper program. And let me know if you guys have any questions.
Any questions for Joaquin? Thank you, Joaquin, for that.
Yeah, Ken.
Yeah, so if the team has a chainsaw, there's some fire risk associated with operating the chainsaw. And I'm just curious if in this county, in our SRAs, there should be a window of time where the contractors can't work because of the risk of an ignition.
The team would not be operating chainsaw. All the wood should be already cut and put in piles before the team gets there.
Okay, great. That solves that problem. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else for Joaquin before we let him go?
So one more question, sort of off slightly oblique, but the carbon cost of either burning or mulching the chips, noticeable. The chips can go to make methane, bad greenhouse gas. They can also be used for biofuel in a fermenter. Is there any option for doing that around here?
That is not something that I know. That is not something that I have looked into yet, but I can definitely do some research and get back to you on it.
I think some of the local ag outfits, when they take an entire orchard out, will sell that stuff to the fermenting companies. I don't know how that goes, but it's something to look into. Yeah, great job. That was very, very informative. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thanks, Ken. Great questions. Anything else for Joaquin before we let him go?
I guess I'm curious if there's anyone in this group who is going to want to get involved in how we roll out this chipping program. Because we're going to want input from, and maybe it's going back to the community groups, but we're going to definitely want input on, Joaquin talked about all these different kinds of ways we can do it, and what are the communities going to want and what's going to work for them. And if we should just go to the community fire safe councils and talk to them about that, or if there's specific people who are like, yeah, I really have some ideas, and so talk to us about that. We would like to figure that out.
But I'd like to put my hand up. It's Don Palm. Because I think it's a phenomenally, this got an enormous amount of promise, but and I can understand all the questions, but they all seem like very manageable questions. I'd really like to work on it.
Awesome.
Thanks, Don.
This is Neil. One of the challenges we're going to have with the chipper program is changing practices. In my neighborhood, there's a lot of burn piles that are created each year and burned. And so the residents have all gotten used to this idea of how to manage all their pruning through burning. And it's pretty easy and pretty convenient. So, you know, I see some advantages to go into chipping, but you're going to have to change your practice. So there, it may not be as uniformly, universally subscribed to as we may think. And the other issue that I would have is that I've always had an adage that it's better to rent than to buy. And buying a chipper and maintaining it for use in a limited period of the year may be better to rent or to contract.
The vast majority of RCDs and fire safe councils rent out.
One of the problems I've heard though about renting is getting high quality equipment that you can trust when you use it the day of. So we will look into that. We don't have to buy, but for example, the flood control district, that they do have a fleet of, you know, machines that they know how to maintain, which is another reason why we might like to go with them. But we won't, you know, I think we should consider it and discuss it a little further. For sure, it's a good point.
I'd be interested in working on it for Cape Valley. Severa might be the best avenue, but I can coordinate with them and see if I could just volunteer with them or how they'd like to do that.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I would definitely agree that Cape Valley, we have a lot of opportunities for chipping versus burning, but
So Jonathan, I can talk to you more.
Yeah, my comments about needing to change practices was not meant in any way to throw cold water on the issue. I've looked into personally buying a chipper just because I believe in it. So I definitely like the idea, but I do think that there will not be everyone signing up.
This may be a little bit of a sidetrack, but there's also it's not a chipping type equipment, but it's a burning apparatus that you can burn hotter to build biochar with. And I don't have any experience with it. I don't know if anyone's heard of that, but it's like it's a kind of a specialized ring that intensifies the heat, I think, and creates this more stable form of carbon versus just burning things to ash. I have heard of other, you know, resource conservation districts and fire safe council groups or Firewise groups putting those kinds of things on the ground. I'm not sure how interesting it would be or appropriate for this group. So there's a lot to do or think about here. Oh, Tracy dropped a low budget biochar kiln in the chat link. Thanks, Tracy. Sorry, I'm cutting somebody off. Who's chiming in here?
oh no, I was going to also add that I know some of the regenerative organic folks that might be another interest up here in the Cape Valley. You know, as far as especially since it's hard to control the burn to get it right. If you're, you know, if you want to try to make biochar.
Jonathan's quite right, and I'd be interested in working on that with you also, Jonathan.
So for those of you who can see the chat, there are some interesting links that have been dropped in there about a biochar kiln and a grant opportunity that Mike Wilson just dropped in. So make sure you check that resource before we close.
All right. there's nothing more on the chipper program, we will thank Joaquin, let him go. And Tanya, do you have anything for the good of the order before we go around and let everybody have a chance at saying their piece?
I just say check the chat. And again, if you want to become a defensible space ambassador, as in you can go talk to your neighbors and share information with them about what they need to do to make their homes more fire safe, then please contact me soon.
Does anybody have anything for the good of the order? Anything that we missed or something they'd like to share with the group before we sign off for the day?
I've got one.
Thanks, please.
Yeah, this is just some good news. So the PG&E contractors have been working around our neighborhood and across the creek, I think mostly on a particular distribution line. And they're putting up new poles with fire wrapping. They're putting wider crossbars, new transformers, and especially they're putting up heavy duty insulated conductors on the distribution circuit. So should reduce the odds of ignitions and probably reduce the number of PSPS events if they do the right thing with all that new gear. So just some great fire news that I wanted to share.
Hey, thanks for sharing, Ken. Anybody else for the good of the order, something to share? Good news is always welcome.
I just emailed out, there's a roadside community chipping program grant available to fire departments that might be a nice match to that money that just got secured. So check that out. I sent it to the fire folks.
Thanks, Tracy.
Yeah, I with the reminder had also forwarded a link to that. That's the Ready, Set, Go program. It looked like it was mostly for fire protection districts.
I wanted to take a second to introduce myself. I'm Aldrin, and I recently joined or was brought onto this. My partner Christian Kane and I own a company. I run a business called Perennial Grazing, and we have sheep and goats, and we want to try to get involved with Yolo community and figure out how our sheep can also help. So yeah, just starting off connecting with you guys. I'll be at the plant sale this weekend and seeing how we can get involved. So thanks for letting us join today.
Well, thanks for joining us. Anybody else for the good of the order? All right, thanks all for jumping on today. Our next meeting is April 27th from 4 to 5:30. And if there's nothing else, we'll adjourn the meeting.
Great. Thank you, Chief Ramirez. Thank you,
Good
Chief
meeting.
Lopez.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
Yep, thanks.
Thanks, Chief. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
So Heather, I have to download this. So don't end.